Hey guys, it's Big Man Radiance's mid lane here, and today we'll be going over a build guide for all of you that are struggling with builds out there. Let's just get straight into it really, and let's talk about the starting build of a game. You'll be starting Mage Blessing 9 times out of 10, maybe 10 out of 10, apart from Kukulkan, in my opinion anyway. Kukulkan, you'd probably want to start Book 2, which will lead into Book of Thoth eventually, but pretty much every other god, it'll be Mage Blessing. Now, the item you pair it up with does depend on your path. So if you're going to go lifesteal, you start Tiny Trinket. If you're going to go into the flat pen build, which we'll call, you're going to go Magic Focus, which is tier 1 Desolation. Or if you want to rush Chronos Pendant or Doom Orb, you go into tier 1 Chronos Pendant or tier 1 Doom Orb. The best start for early game aggression and the most power you can effectively get with Mana Sustain is going that Magic Focus. And we'll be talking about that build first after we quickly talk and discuss boots real quick. But usually you'll be starting Mage's Blessing tier 1, Magic Focus, and then obviously the pots. You can go 2 health, 1 mana, 1 health, 2 mana. Just depends on your god and how aggressive you're going to be playing early. So we brought up boots a quick second ago. So we'll be talking about boots really quick before we get into the builds and explain the items and talking about the two main builds that you'll be seeing out of the SPL players right now. And the boots, how I see it, there's power boots and there's CDR boots. Yeah, purple versus blue, basically. So if the god benefits a lot of cooldown and needs mana, two conditions right there. You should probably obviously go cooldown boots, right? Some examples that you could throw out there would be Poseidon. He's mana hungry, likes cooldown reduction to get around the map with his 2. Merlin's an obvious example where you most likely want to go those cooldown boots. He needs the cooldowns. His cooldowns are insanely long. And the mana as well, he needs. He switches a lot, uses a lot of abilities early game to clear waves. So if the gods are like that, you want to go into those cooldown boots. Some examples where power might be more effective. Raging is an example that comes to mind. He obviously does benefit from cooldown. Every mage is going to benefit from cooldown, but there's some gods that don't need it as much as others. Radiant's probably one of those where you can just go power boots. You can get that little bit of sustain with the lifesteal, but mainly you're going to get that power where you're going to play him early. Once you get that first, second item online, you want to be aggressive, and those boots allow you to do that sooner than cooldown boots. So hopefully that gives you a small insight on obviously what boots to go depending on your god. Neither boots is wrong. That's one thing to put out there. Um, there's obviously heavily preferred boots to go on select gods, but neither's wrong. You can make both work. You know, power boots give a little bit of mana. They give that sustain. They give that extra power. Your early game's better. Cooldown boots, you can obviously use your cooldowns more. You have more mana sustain, so you can stay in farm longer. There's benefits to them both, and it just depends on the god and your playstyle and what you're planning to do. So now we've talked about boots and now how to usually start the game. I want to quickly go into the most common build right now that you're probably seeing in a lot of your ranked games and a lot of your SPL games that you're watching. I call it the flat pen build. You can call it whatever you want. But the core 3 items are usually flat pen. There's some exceptions to this, which we'll quickly go over. But usually you'll be starting Mage Blessing tier 1. Magic Focus, which is tier 1 Spear of Desolation, and you want to get those boots online as soon as possible. Like we said, you can go either boots, depends on your god, depends on the playstyle. Now you want to take this Magic Focus into Divine Ruin, or Spear of Desolation. If they have anti-healing, it's an obvious choice. You want to get that Divine Ruin as soon as possible. It gives a lot of power and a lot of flat pen for the price, and obviously it gives the anti-healing, which in fact translates to damage almost, because they obviously can't heal. You're causing them to not regain their health, so in a way it's a lot more damage than it actually says on the paper, on the text. And then you want to turn your next magic focus, so you're going to go straight from Divine Ruin boots into Spear of Desolation. Now this gives you 30 flat pen in 3 items, which is a lot. You're doing a lot of damage to carries with that flat pen. And also because it's so early on in the game, flat pen's even better because a lot of gods don't have high amounts of protections, including their support. Their support's probably trying to stack Thebes, and you've already got your first or second flat pen item built, and you're going to be doing a lot of damage, and that's why it's so strong right now. So those 3 items, the boots, the Divine Ruin, and the Spirit of Desolation, are super strong, and that's why they're being built so very common, I would say, in ranked and SPL. Now you may be wondering, what do you go if they don't have healing? Well, you can go a lot of items, I would say. You can look into Soul Gem, for example. You can look into Pythags. It doesn't lock you into a lifesteal build, which is what I like. You can go Pythags for the early prots and the team aura, or you can go to Soul Gem for the extra little bit of burst, the more sustain, the cooldown, and it gives health. Soul Gem's a really well-rounded item, or its price. So if they don't have any healing, you can go Spear of Desolation, boots into Soul Gem, and it would work just as well. So now that you've got your 3 items built in the most standard build, I would say, what do you build next? In my opinion, what you would see most SPL players build, and what I would build, it'd be into Soul Reaver. You don't need that hard 20% pen right away. You can get away with going that 10%, and that's where Soul Reaver comes in. It gives 10% pen, it gives a lot of power, and it gives mana for those gods which are hungry for mana. Like we said earlier, Merlin is one of those examples where he wants mana. He needs mana to cast his abilities because he uses a lot of mana. So I would go Soul Reaver. Soul Reaver is unbelievably strong right now. It does so much damage. Its passive is insane and how much damage it does, and it scales. As soon as you build it, you're not getting the most value out of it right away because they haven't really hit their health threshold from hitting level 20 and building a health items, because the item is very good at scaling. So as the game goes on, Soul Reaver just gets better and better. It's really good when you first build it, but it actually gets better, and that's the amazing part of it. So now we've got our 4 items. We've talked about 4 now. So you're moving into your 5th and 6th. These are your late game items, I'd say. Your core build is what I've just talked about. Now these late game items obviously vary. This is where the build can vary a lot. You have to look at what they have, and you've got to look at what you need, and you've got to see what you need to build. A lot of items can fit into these slots, but before we get into the more variable slot, we need to talk about the 5th slot, which I would say 9 times out of 10 should be your pen slot. Now there's only 2 options really for your pen slot. If you go this build, not the lifesteal build, we'll get over that later. It's shard and coin. Now I see a lot of people talk about shard and coin, and they don't know which one to go. It's a tricky subject, I would say. Shard's a little bit cheaper, but it obviously does provide that more or that stronger damage against tanks with that extra 10%, which does overcap, by the way. It's very important to know it does overcap. If you do want to go for that 40% with a shard, you can get to that 50 with one ability with a 10-second cooldown. I'm going to tell you guys right now, neither one is wrong. You can build shard or you can build coin in this slot, and nobody should flame you. There's certain gods where particularly you do not want shard, or you want to move towards coin to get the movement speed or the sustain or the MP5 a bit more, and that's perfectly reasonable. But usually 9 times out of 10, neither is wrong. Just a few examples: I would build coin on Agni, just because shard would proc on noxious fumes when you go for a bomb stun, for example. And Merlin, another example. You can build shard or coin on Merlin. If you want the MP5, go coin. If you want that little bit more damage on killing tanks quicker before they get their higher prots in line, go shard. Yeah, it's up to you. It's up to you. Both are perfectly acceptable. Now we're moving into our last item, into the flat pen build, and now this is usually where it can change. You can go Mantle of Discord if you're getting dove a lot as a mage and you need the extra survivability and that cooldown. Mantle of Discord's a perfect option in this slot. Usually though, you want to go Rod. Rod is a great item to have. It does give that MP5. It gives the abundance of power which it provides, and it gives that great passive for when they're below a certain threshold. You get the extra damage, and it's just a great item to round out your build. You hit a really strong power spike when you get it, and it's just a great item to have. You can't really go wrong with it. Just a few other items that can go in this slot. Staff of Mirrodin, I think it is a fine item. Depends on your god, if you can utilize the passive well, I'd say, or if you want the cooldown compared to Rod. Good item to have. Or you can go to E-Staff. So if they've got a really health heavy comp, you can go into that E-Staff, and it's a pretty good pickup. You get survivability, you get that E-Staff passive, which is great at dealing that little bit of extra damage on top of Soul Reaver to their tanks, and it's a great way to round out the build. So that's the flat pen build. You'll see the items on screen right now in the order that you should build them, and hopefully you understand. Hopefully I explained it well enough why you should go those items on specific gods and why they're being built, for example. But yeah, that's the flat pen build. We're going to quickly talk over another type of build, which is the lifestyle builds, which doesn't get built as much, but is certainly viable, I would say. So usually you start Mage's Blessing again, or there's an exception to the lifestyle build. You can rush Bancroft, so you can get Bancroft's tier 2. However, personally, I would say go with the Mage's Blessing. I find it's just better sustain, and it just helps you get out the early game a little bit better. So, for this video, we're going to go Mage's Blessing Tiny Trinket. Now, this Tiny Trinket is going to transition into a Bancroft's, and then we're going to build our boots of choice, which we spoke about earlier. You go blue boots or power boots, depending on what you need. And then you're going to go into Typhon's Fang. We haven't spoke about this item before because it's only usually that good when you build other lifesteal items. So usually you want power boots with this build. It's not required, but I would say it's preferred. If you're playing a god that can get away with not having that cooldown on mana, you want to go power boots. It has that little bit of lifesteal on it. It will benefit Typhon's Fang that much more. So you want to build that Typhon's Fang. And now Typhon's Fang is pretty cool because it has 10% pen. So you get that 10% pen a little bit earlier than the other build, which is pretty good. Now the build kind of loses its unique, I guess, way right now because it kind of follows fit with the other builds. So you want to be going as a Soul Reaver, and then you want to be going into your more pen items, which is coin and shard, and then you want to go into that sixth item, which is situational, as we said before. It can be rod, it can be e-staff, it could be mantle, it can be whatever you need it to be, but 9 times out of 10 you'd want rod. It's the best bang for your buck. The passive's great, the power's great, it gets the job done. We're going to quickly go over a couple of the other builds we spoke about earlier. So there's the tier 2 book build, which I would say you should only do on Kukulkan. There's maybe a few other examples if you want to go down that route, but it's very uncommon right now within the meta, where you can go Book of Thoth, Book of the Dead, and those kind of items. But it's not really common, so I would probably stay away from that as much as possible. But you can rush Book of Thoth on Kukulkan, and you can go into like Poly and other great mana items which work well with him. Usually you want to be rushing after that, like you want to go Book of Thoth into those cooldown boots, Desolation, Soul Reaver, Poly, Rod. That's just an example build on Kukulkan right there if you want to go down that route. But more importantly, Mage's Blessing and the Kronos Pendant tier 1 start is another common build which you can see right now. Not as common as the spear builds, which are super common basically in every game if there's a normal mage being played. But you can rush Kronos Pendant and you can rush Doom Orb, and you can replace either Desolation or Divine Ruin, depending on if you need the anti-heal or not. Gods which are good with Doomorb are like Poseidon, where you can get around the map a lot quicker. The movement speed's really good on him, it benefits him a lot. And Chronos Pendant's good on gods like Agni, gods like Merlin, where that cooldown reduction allows you to be a lot more effective, a lot more ability to be able to throw it out at a quicker rate. The build is pretty much the same after replacing either Divine Ruin or Desolation, depending if you need the anti-heal or not. You just go down the Soul Reaver route into more Pen, which is Shard or Coin, into the Rod, E-Staff, or whatever you need to finish out your build is. But again, I would personally recommend the Rod of Tahuti. So I think that pretty much covers it, or the main build I would say right now, and I hopefully explained it well enough why it's being built in that order and why those items are so strong and why they're being picked up. On the screen right now will be the flat pen build and the lifesteal build. That you can see right now in the order that you should build it. Make sure you build boots first. Obviously, you start with Magic Focus with the Mage's Blessing, but do not rush Divine Ruin or Desolation. You want to get that movement speed as soon as possible with those boots. And again, those boots depend on your playstyle and the god and what you're trying to achieve within that game. It kind of just depends on your god, like I said, and what you want to do. If you want to pressure him early, go the power boots. If you want to sit back, farm a little bit more, your god utilizes a lot more cooldown, go to CDR boots. But I hope this video was informative. I hope I was clear enough in the build, and I hope the pictures on the screen showing the order was good enough so you can see what to build and when to build it. If there's any questions, please put them in the comments below. I can answer them. If there's any specific questions about certain items or another build that you thought of, and we can talk about it in the comments, and I can, give my opinion on it if you would like that. But yeah, thank you for watching, everyone. I hope this video was good, and if you enjoyed it, please like it or share it or whatever you want to do. And yeah, I hope you guys have a great day, and thank you for watching. Take care, everyone.